I wanted to tell you that Rodin was a great enthusiast of ancient Egyptian art. And he used to have antique Egyptian sculpture at his dining room table and different little maquettes and things of great antiquity. But one of the great messages he had was that the gods see everywhere. And so the places that you literally don't ever expect to see in sculpture are actually shining out and creating the surface. It's an art of great truth. And so Rodin had the idea that sculpture encloses places that are not able to be normally seen. And he had an idea with the Louvre that if he went at night, he could study alone what the ancients did one-on-one. And so we had an agreement with the guards. And he used to take candles in his pockets. And they used to light, he used to light candles and take them into the Louvre, the wee hours. And candlelight exposes and reflects and vivifies qualities of all the planes of the sculpture as it comes through in the intention and traces downward and begins to show how the flow of one form to another, all the intention of the sculptor and all the intention of the material in creating the forms arise. The rates of how they collect light, how they are formed, how the patina. And so all of that begins to become part of a greater appreciation when the light of the sculpture begins to change. So too with the sun, which being as the heart of a fabulous reaction of beyond description, that this figure is a disembodied and vapored anatomical dream, and is much smoother than the moon, because it's the center of a tremendous reaction. So the evocation is blazing and much more you have that feeling of the energy welling in all directions. And so the striations coming from this begin to come this way, and subtly throughout all the piece you could see how every direction of the energy is addressed in the loops and in the coronal ejections. But the Fournier patina begins to describe the form differently than it does on the moon. And the striation of the energy patterning coming into all the musculature, which is part of the whole compressive art of sculpture, that with further compression that would become much more powerful. In the latissimus dorsi and the coracoid processes and all the things that human anatomy could be interpreted for. Actually, these are just merely pressure points of my hands that your eyes collect as figuration. I'm a figurateur not because I've inherited it, but because the materials of sculpture want to transform within and present it. I could leave the energy webs abstract, but the collected energy is focused when it comes into figuration. And these, when you see figuration, these are advanced passages of touching and handling the sculpture. And the smoothness of the sculpture is an artifact of collecting hundreds of hours of hand printing and hand rubbing, of collecting the care and the skill of all the touch put upon it, that it becomes more than an object. It becomes like a living kind of a candle in and of itself. So that Polaris and the star, and the way the knee collects, and the expressions between Solaris, Polaris, and Lunas have a different portrait mask than on any other sculptures. And I invite you to contemplate those. Perhaps they have a little step ladder. All right, Daniel. So I want to thank you so much for sort of going back in time to how it was when he carried candles in to examine sculptures to see how one form could flow into another and express portions of sculpture not readily visible. So I want to thank you all so very much. And thank you, Rhea, for having me here.
Thank you so much for being here.
I think we're going to commune now.
Thank you. Thank you for being here.
The breath of life is in sculpture. And the breath of life is a holy and incredible thing to be cherished always. And cataclesis in the study form and in the monumental form describes what great sculptors have known through the ages, and that is that the substances of natural sculpture, the soil and the quartz crystal that is within the clay and the bronze, are living substances. Probably in 1970, in the 70s, modern science stepped forward and realized that rocks and the nature of the earth is going through life cycles just as humanity is. That all our concerns about the planet and warming and the nature of extinction and the nature of generations of life and the planetary movements toward creation are all coming forward. But they're coming forward in a harmony. Much of what you'll read may be negative. But if we think of the positive, these things we can see as a direction for ourselves, for the art of sculpture. That we're involved in a tremendous birth process that doesn't lead to an end, but to another beginning. And Cataclesis sits in this place where we have the forces and energies that are deep within the crust of the earth that show us the aging of the rocks and the formations of which we ourselves are composed of. It begins with the idea of latent. And latent is not just a drawing in. It is not just seen as old age for rocks within modern science. It's also seen as the beginning of regeneration, so that the end circles back to the beginning. The drawing up of the noble hand, the drawing up of the figure, the intention of the clay drawn into itself as I shape it. You can see my fingerprints, particularly in the studio, pressing upon floating armatures, and my fingers coming into these areas are shaped. This is a direction of tremendous power that when I'm involved in the creation of sculpture, you can see that getting into these pieces. You can see my hands upon it and the whoosh of my fingers. And you can see the generational crunch of how the athletic gesture directly affects the whole forms coming into the emerging, where you have a figure where you have the whoosh behind it, and you come into the power of the gesture as it doubles back and comes out like a jet. This is youth, expressed not as an age form, with latent not expressed as a baby or a wrinkle, but as an artistic intention that we have the power within ourselves to regenerate within cycles that are appropriate to our experience. It's a mystery. This is the great emerging element. This is the youth. This is the doubling back. This is all of expectation and the cantilevering of probably 250 pounds of bronze just within the head. Because to support it, this is cast at a different wall. All of these are engineered. They may look natural, they may appear as gestural, but they're also highly choreographed in terms of how they hang together and are made possible by the extrusions of their material. I've invented the waxes. I've invented the foundry protocols, the formulas, building upon my antique heritage. But these are new passages and pioneering passages in ribbon banding, in extrusions, to bring these out in one piece and not have them fall apart in traditional foundry waxes from the 19th century. These are tremendous power packs to me, and particularly in the active element where you've got the hands. And in this particular scale, you've got the ability to be able to express the mass of the motion. Whereas in the study, you'll have to have a more intimate insight to see it. In this particular scale that's at the Hakone Open Air Museum, the largest museum in the world in Japan, this sculpture is in the permanent collection. It won the greatest sculpture prize in the world, the International Rodin Competition. But it really describes my art in the sense that We're so deeply earth connected to the empowerment of the forces, the positive forces that create so many possibilities if our imaginations can enclose them. I'm just a girl. And I'm never a threat. These tremendous forces come together and create this immense idea of mountain building, which is really orogenesis. This is the scientific name. All these pieces through all the galleries have a scientific name as romantic as they may ever sound, like windscarf or, helix or Solaris or the Terra. But these are all geological scientific names. And they all describe certain aspects of the creational forces upon the planet of which we arise. And the real name of this is orogenesis, and it's been shifted to genesis for purposes of literature and such. But that's the geological name of it, and there's my finger. There's my thumb, clutching it and coming down through these back ribbons. And the purpose of this piece is really cantilevered on two opposing factors, that the stronger the opposition, the greater